I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Vegas 90, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And like I always say off the top, the thumbnail gives it away. My biggest stock riser on this card has to be Brendan Allen. What a fight that was in the main event against Chris Curtis. He gets a split decision win. It definitely was one of those split fights. It was close. It was very close. I don't think this was Brendan Allen's best performance. I thought there was a point during the fight that Chris Curtis was going to take over this matchup, but that fifth round was really key there for Brendan Allen, being able to put Curtis against the cage there and land some good shots. That certainly looked good in the eyes of the judges. Allen ends up taking this one, but it's also just the implications of where Allen's at in his career. He's on a 7-fight win streak right now. He took Chris Curtis on short notice, which, I know there's a lot of people who aren't big fans of Chris Curtis, but he is a tough outing. That's why I didn't think we'd see Brendan Allen finish Chris Curtis when I did my preview show. I thought we're talking about a guy in Chris Curtis who's very tough to take out here. So not an easy opponent for Brendan Allen to beat on short notice. He gets it done. And like I mentioned, 7-fight win streak at this point. I don't think he's going to get that title shot he wants. Again, if this was a little bit more impressive from Allen's end, maybe you get that. But you can't deny that his stock has not gone up after this performance, getting another win here, extending that winning streak, and again, beating a tough veteran here in Chris Curtis. So to me, the biggest winner on this card was Brendan Allen, just because, again, he's going to be in that top 5 spot, or at least close to it, as far as the next opponent. I think there's a lot of good options there. He wants Sean Strickland. Strickland currently doesn't have an opponent. I don't know if he'll get that fight. We'll see. A lot of names are being paired up here and there, right? We're hearing rumblings about Duplessis and Adesanya potentially happening at UFC 305. We obviously have Chimaev and Whitaker booked, so that's taken up a few spots. There's still Paulo Costa. There's still Strickland, like I mentioned. So we'll see what's next for Allen, but either way, he's in a good spot with a big win there over Chris Curtis in the main event of tonight's card. All right, let's get into our second biggest stock riser on this card. And to me, it has to be Bantamweight. Now, look, he was a big favorite going into this fight. Let me just even look at the odds here. I think he was like minus 310. So look, he was expected to win. And, as far as like stock goes, I think this is more of a case of how he finished the fight, right? So to me, Bantamweight is getting the best finish on this card. A nice head kick knockout over Giagos. The thing was, when Bantamweight is on, this guy looked unstoppable. He looks unbelievable. And this is a good opponent for him to do that in an opponent in Giagos here tonight. So I thought Bantamweight, just from the way he won this fight, really raised his stock. Is this a guy that's going to go on any sort of run at lightweight? I don't know. He's had a few setbacks. The Klein fight, I know Klein's a very good fighter in that weight class, but he's got to beat some better opposition here if we want to get him to that next level. But I just think the fact that he got a highlight reel finish against a guy that he's supposed to beat, that still does raise his stock a little bit, right? So again, good win there for Bantamweight. 26 years old. I think we forget about that. He's still relatively young here. So he was someone just from hey, this is good to see from a prospect type performance tonight from Bantamweight, getting it done in on the main card of this event. Let's talk next about our other stock riser on this card. And to me, it has to be Norma Dumont. Now, look, I know Norma Dumont doesn't exactly light the world on fire with her performances, but she took out a former UFC champion. And, again, we'll talk about Durandamy a little bit later on this program, but she's now got 4 fights, four wins in a row, just the one loss there to Macy Chasson, which is a split. She's won, overall, she's won what? If my math's correct, 3, 6, 7. She's 7-1 in her last 8 fights. Like, that's good. I mean, regardless of what you thought of her performance tonight or, her game plan, I mean, it worked, obviously taking down Durandamy a lot. If you're looking sort of right now at like contenders at Bantamweight, there aren't that many. And I think with Dumont getting this win, she sort of put herself in that position. I think most people feel like it's going to be Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena next. We've also got Holly Holm and Kayla Harrison next week. If something weird happens there, in terms of how that fight ends up, the winner of that might be able to get a title shot. But I think Dumont has safely put herself in a good position right now with this win. And I think this is the type of win she needed because, I mean, I know Durandamy's coming off a long layoff here, but this is by far her best win. If that's maybe one of the things that you could argue is that she doesn't have a lot of quality wins on the resume. This is a good one for her, though, of Durandamy, who I know people look at her age and everything, but Durandamy's only ever lost to Amanda Nunes in the UFC. So again, we're talking about a really, really good fighter in Durandamy, who also has a win over Juliana Pena as well. So Norma Dumont has to be put there. I know there's going to be pushback on this, but again, you can't deny her placement in the division after a win like this. It was very good. Let me just quickly look at the rankings. I actually don't remember off the top of my head where she is ranked, but if you look at it there, women's bantamweight, she's number 11, so she gets a win here. That'll boost her up a little bit. In the rankings, you'd have to be. I mean, I would put her ahead of like a Pani Kianzad right now with that win. So yeah, big win there for Norma Dumont, getting it done. Some honorable mentions. I always do this on the show. I've got a few of them tonight. I think you have to put Damon Jackson in there. Jackson could have been cut from this loss, right? and he also fought an opponent who missed weight. He took a risk there, but he gets it done. Tough losses there to Ige and Quarantillo, but Hernandez has got knockout power. That was one of the reasons I didn't really bet on this fight at all, because I was worried that Hernandez could knock him out, and that didn't happen. Jackson survives, ends up getting a decision himself, but you have to put Damon Jackson as a stock riser just because, had he lost this fight, he might not be in the UFC. They're not very forgiving to fighters losing 3 fights in a row. So I think just from that metric, you have to put Damon Jackson there as well. This one, I know I'm going to get some pushback on, but Chepe Mariscal, look, I know a lot of people felt he shouldn't have got the nod on the scorecard. I personally thought that Sherry did do enough. I had him winning the first 2 rounds and Chepe winning the third. But the fact of the matter is this, he's got 3 straight wins in the UFC, and that's, especially good considering he was an underdog tonight. So his stock with the fans has probably gone down, but his stock overall has gone up because at the end of the day, he's got 3 straight wins in the UFC, and that is looking good on the resume right now. So Chepe Mariscal for me, stock also went up. And I'll throw one more, and I don't usually do this, but I think Chris Curtis's stock went up tonight. Again, I know there's people who aren't big fans of what he's doing here, but Brendan Allen is a ranked middleweight. He's someone that has been in the UFC for a while. I know Curtis already had the win over him, but he narrowly won this fight, and that's one thing you have to kind of look at where, he can hang with these type of really good ranked fighters. So to me, even though he lost, it was short notice. He obviously hurt himself at the end of the fight. He might have won this fight had he not, gotten hurt at the last moment of the fight. He might have been able to steal that 5th round. And again, I scored it pretty close going into that 5th round. In fact, I had it tied actually going into the 5th round. So, he may have lost this fight, but I think Curtis's stock actually went up a bit because he put on a good fight, narrowly almost beat Allen, and then again, he showed that he belongs there. There was a lot of people I saw going into this fight that, Curtis is overrated and he's handpicking his opponents and all this different stuff. I think people, and one thing I've noticed just as a quick side note, I think a lot of people look how fighters act online, and then that blinds them to how good of a fighter they are. They're doing it with Jamal Hill too right now, I notice. Look, forget what you think about Chris Curtis online or how he acts towards fans and stuff. He's a good fighter, and he showed that here tonight, narrowly losing to Brendan Allen, so he gets an honorable mention on my stock report. But let's talk about the biggest losers, the biggest stock droppers on this card. And the biggest one has to be Alex Hernandez. So not only does Hernandez miss weight by 4 pounds, he loses tonight as a betting favorite. And now if you look at it there, that's 4 losses in his last 5 fights. Hernandez could get cut after this. Again, you want to find an easy way to get into the UFC, lose a number of fights in a row, and miss weight. That's an easy combination to getting released here. And it sucks because I like Hernandez. I think he's a good personality. He's entertaining to watch. But this was a missed opportunity for him, and he has to be the biggest stock dropper on this card, again, because he was favored going in. And like I said, prior to all this, he had made weight and all that. I know actually he had missed weight before. I'm trying to remember which fight it was. I'll show it here. Actually, no, he's never missed weight. Never mind. Why did I have it in my head he missed weight one time? Anyways, so again, you miss weight, you lose this fight decisively. I know it was a split, but I thought Damon Jackson clearly won. That's the biggest stock dropper on this card. So yeah, Alex Hernandez, we'll see what happens this week as far as where he goes in his UFC career going forward. They may give him one more just because usually it's 3 in a row. They cut you off, but we'll have to see which way they want to go on this one with Alex Hernandez. Okay, the other stock dropper to me was Jermaine Durand to me. And look, I'll fully admit I picked her in this fight. Might have not been a good pick looking in hindsight, but I mean, again, this is a woman who's only lost to Amanda Nunes. Now look, I understand she is 39 years old and she has not fought since October of 2020. So I take that back. Actually, I think I said 2 years off. It's almost 4 years that she's been off. So that's a long time to try and, get back in the swing of things. But on paper, she's a much better fighter. And you got to learn, how do you not stop those takedowns? So Durand to me, for me, she was even talking prior to this fight about if I win this, I could fight for the title. Well, you're not fighting for anything other than maybe a ranked opponent next, but that's a tough loss to have. I did have her winning the second round of this fight, but not enough to get it done. Again, missed opportunity there for Durand to me just because, I think this was a favorable fight for her. I know the odds didn't suggest that, but I thought this was an opportunity for her to win and get into, some title contention. And now she's, lost in the shuffle, so to speak, at women's bantamweight. So Durand means another stock dropper. And then the last one for me, again, I know he was also an underdog on this card, but for me, it's Trevor Peak, just for the simple fact that Trevor Peak is now 2-2 in the UFC. This is a guy that you remember came in, had that great win over Ghost Pepper Gonzalez, finishing him in the first round, and hasn't really been able to replicate that. Lost to Chepe, who again, I think is very good, did get the win over Muhammad Yahya, loses to Charlie Campbell tonight in a, a tough fight, but ultimately I think with what we thought Trevor Peak was going to be coming into the UFC, and after that UFC debut, it really hasn't lived up to that. So Peak for me is another guy that has dropped a bit of stock. Not that he had a ton going in, but just if you look at where Peak was after that UFC debut to where he is now 2-2 in the UFC, I think that has to be a bit of a stock dropper there. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. I know there may be some other fights I didn't talk about, or there's other ones you didn't want to. Again, I just kind of have my own formula for doing the stock report thing. It's a mix of the context of where they are in the division. Are they on a win streak, lose streak? I don't really put too much stock on what fans think, although that does help a bit too, in terms of what fans think as well. But those are sort of my criteria. So let me know your top 3 biggest stock risers and stock droppers on UFC Vegas 90. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let's have a civil discussion. I know that's asking a lot, but it'd be great if we could actually talk about this and have a fun discussion about tonight's card, a great event. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.